You're listening to the Farm-A-Yard podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Farm-A-Yard. It's a movement, have you heard? And our Patreon supporters. Episode 37, A Journey Through the Blood Types, Part 1, with host Linda Borghi and guest Farm-A-Yard co-founder Marsha Howe.
Well, hello there. This is Linda Borghi from Farm-A-Yard, and you are just one seed away. Well, how are you this fine day? I know you really enjoyed the last episode with the neighborly application. Oh boy, I really hope that goes viral across the country. I could just see all these neighbors growing food and selling food by the basket for $5 a basket to everyone. So it's really very, very encouraging to me. And we're at this gig, right? We're at this gig of wanting everyone to dig up their yards and grow food, right? Now, why do we want people to do that? We want people to do that because we really want everyone to have access to clean and healthy food. Why? Because that's what our bodies run on. If the food is not nutrient dense, it can't run the engine with a very high efficiency. And we are really blessed at Farm-A-Yard to have a co-founder that is so knowledgeable in the area of health related to food. And I would like to bring her on right now with no further ado, Miss Marsha Howe. Are you there, Marsha?
I am, and so glad to be here. I love talking about food.
I know. Isn't it fun, Marsha?
It sure is.
You're going to teach us an awful lot today. We're actually going to have a two-part series, and they will go one right after another. And this is all on the topic of eating based on your blood type. And I know nothing about this area, nothing whatsoever, other than what Marsha has, talked to me about in the past. So I know that you're all going to be pretty interested in what she has to say. So I'm going to be quiet and give her the floor. Take it away, Marsha.
Thank you, Linda. Well, we're going to play back and forth with this a little bit because that's always fun. So as an introduction, I just want you to know I'm just like you. I'm a person who is on my own wellness journey. And as I've gone through my different age stages also, since I'm not 20 anymore, I have had to kind of go with learning a lot of things through each stage because our needs change as we grow older. And so anyway, I knew about blood type as a tool, to eat according to your blood type as a tool many years ago. This information has been out probably at least 25 years. And, but then when I came into a challenge a few years ago, I was really, researching some things and realized that I had kind of, was not even considering blood type.
What was your challenge?
How I should eat.
What was your challenge, Marsha, if you don't mind?
Well, when I moved here, which is a whole different environment than where I lived.
Here is where? You're in Fayetteville,
Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Right.
So I'm from the West Coast. So there was a lot of things I could consider. What could it be? Because the environment's so different. It was hard to get really good food. The only grass-fed food I could find was pork. And actually, this tool of eating according to your blood type, every blood type would definitely do better without pork. And yet I didn't eat a lot of it, but it was the main meat that I did add to my diet in the form of mainly just a sausage to flavor things. And it was grass-fed, and I knew who raised it, and the whole thing, But anyway, so I became very weak. I had no energy. I had tingling in my extremities. I had, I got viruses every year, like one each year that was really put me down, and I just couldn't get my energy back. It was really fun really challenging. And so as I was researching, I've turned this all around in a year. It took a good year to turn it around and figure it out. And it's more than just blood type. This was just one of the tools I used. And we'll talk more on other things, Linda,
Gotcha.
as to that. But because I do believe, at the different stages we are in life, there's a lot of things that can change and need readdressing. So we have to get to know ourselves, get to know how food affects us, how our environment affects us. We have to pay attention to that. Sometimes even keeping a journal is really helpful.
Sure.
So I teach classes this way often. So it's really important for each person to take responsibility for their health. So to get back to blood type, so this is just an introduction, again, to a tool. This is, some people may feel like this has no validity, but there is science behind it. And so I really think it's a wonderful tool to know about, especially if you're trying to figure out what's going on with you and all the things you're doing are not helping enough. Mm-hmm. This is another one that could be very helpful. It might make a huge difference like it has I know it has for some. So,
well, I say this, I've said this on other podcasts. There was a time when we thought the earth was flat. Mm-hmm. So, these new concepts, we need to be open-minded about them and try them because, this particular modality, you've tried yourself personally and have been successful with it. So you want to share that information with others. And I just wanted to put that in there.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure what part of this necessarily, but I do believe the several things I've put into play, obviously, have helped me tremendously. So, now my energy is just amazing. But I really did struggle in it. And so anyway, so this is an introduction to the role that your blood type plays, your blood type identity plays in food choices that could really bring you to optimal wellness if you give this a try. So the purpose for me even sharing this is to encourage you to explore the ways that work for you. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that takes exploration. You have to experiment with things. Yeah. So we need to learn how to personalize that. But one thing that's very consistent in how I bring forth information is that I love food. And I feel like that is the safest place to start. And it's the foundation of all our health. But my emphasis is on plot to plate as much as you can, grow some of your own food, and consume whole foods. So foods in their whole form are the most important thing we can be doing in our path toward being well and staying well. So
now, for the listeners that don't know what whole foods are, what would a few whole foods be, Marsha?
Okay, so a really simple way to describe that is you could drink apple juice, and we know apples are good, right?
Yeah.
But it's far better to eat an apple. And I cannot tell you how much far better, because today, even juices in the grocery store are not, they've gone through a total process, we talk about processed foods. Well, it's totally processed. And once you take the apple apart like that and juice it, you've removed all the fiber pretty much. And when you do that, your body looks at that totally different. So when you drink apple juice, it'll spike your blood sugar because it goes in and it's a fast uptake. When you eat an apple, so even a diabetic should, eat the whole, they have to be careful even how much sugar they take, but a whole apple is designed to be digested. You have to eat it, so it's a slower eating, right? Mm-hmm. It takes more time to eat an apple. And then the fiber is slowing down the uptake into the body as well, so that you can get the most out of that nutrition. And make sure it is an organic apple. It's the top food that we shouldn't eat that isn't, it should be organic because it's sprayed the worst, including wheat, but
yeah, and grapes and oh God.
Yeah, so many of them are.
So many. It's hard.
So But we're here to take the hardness out of it, because just with a little knowledge, I scored at the store the other day, Linda. They have this little rack there where the stuff that's getting a little too ripe or whatever ends up on the rack.
My favorite rack.
And guess what? I scored 3 bags full of organic apples.
Oh my God.
And I juice with those because I do some juicing too. But oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness is
so
right.
Wonderful.
Oh, how wonderful is that? That is a score.
So anyway, there are ways to do it if you want to do it. So anyway, I thought it'd be good to give you some quotes, kind of bring on board this famous doctor that I like.
Okay.
Since I'm not a doctor, right? and it's did you hear this quote? Our food should be our medicine, and medicine should be our food.
Yes, I have.
And who said that?
I don't know.
His name was Hippocrates.
Oh, Hippocrates.
And you did know that.
I did know that. You're right. I did.
Yeah. And so Hippocrates was supposedly, like the first doctor around the time Jesus lived. Actually, it was somewhere around then, and it was that long ago. And anyway, he didn't really say that. So now you're in on the know, Linda.
Okay.
He is said to have said that by a whole bunch of people, but if you really research it, there's no way of really knowing who said that. We don't know. But it's right in line, though, with everything he did say. Like, I love this one. He said, natural forces within us are the true healers of disease.
Isn't that the God's truth?
And he also said, everyone has a doctor in him or her. Mm-hmm. We just have to help it do its work. The natural healing force within each one of us is the greatest force in getting well. Don't you love it?
I do.
And do you know, too, that illnesses don't just come upon us out of the blue, he said. They are developed from small daily sins. Because remember, this is older language.
Right.
I could say practices, so we could insert practices there. The daily small practices, whether you know they're good or not, you know what I mean? Against nature. When we do things against nature, then once enough of those have accumulated, illness will suddenly appear. Mm-hmm. And then he also said, all disease starts in the gut. And don't we hear that a lot among your functional medicine doctors now?
Well, yeah. It does all start in the gut.
But he was the one who actually said that. So
right.
There's another thing, Linda, you and I have in common is that we love to observe. Mm-hmm. We observe in the garden. Well, what I'm bringing this to is that it's so important. This doctor we're talking about, he was really good at observation. And so based on that and understanding nature, that's why he said these things. He really knew that we have to take responsibility for our own health by first observing and taking note of how we feel and what's going on. And whatever we're putting into our body has got to have something to do with it, right? Mm-hmm. So now to blood type, because I know we have a short time, so you keep me on time, Linda.
Okay, don't you worry. We're doing
I know
well.
you're so good at that. Okay, so the blood type diet. There's a book out called Eat Right for Your Type, just to give you the information, and it's by Dr. Peter Adamo.
And we're going to put all that in the show notes, so nobody has to worry about that right now.
Okay, and actually, this is not to sell any book, because you can just go online and plug in blood type diet, and there's lots of information there, and you can look at your blood type if you know what it is. Do you know yours, Linda?
I don't. I haven't been to the doctor in so long. I don't.
Well, and I hear that a lot. Sometimes the doctor can't even find it, even though
Whoa.
And so I get that, and maybe we'll play a little game, and I can see if I can figure it out. What your blood type is.
Fun. That sounds like fun, Marsha.
So here we go. So the history and the evolution of blood types. I'm just going to touch on this just a little bit. So there's 4 blood types. They are O, A, B, and AB. So there is a code, actually a blood code blueprint for each blood type. And so I'm going to give you a few facts about that code so you can kind of get, understand the background of what we're going to be talking about related to food too. So first of all, a single drop of blood contains your entire genetic code.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty amazing, huh?
It is. Oh, wow.
Your blood type is the key to your body's entire immune system. So what we're talking about here is all about the immune system and the blood. So the immune system defines self, and it wants to destroy what is not self. Okay, that's the job of the immune system. So the chemical fingerprint called antigens are found on cells. One of those antigens determines your blood type. So they are the immune system's greatest security system. So we all have a security system. That's what these antigens on the cells are about. So this is why we could actually die if given blood that was not our type. That's why they always test to make sure, because you've got an on-guard antigen on your cell that is going to destroy anything that doesn't match it.
Right.
Especially that, your blood type. So type O, though, is based on, is the base from which all these other blood types came from. So that's why they're the universal donor. They can donate to any blood type.
So we all started out as O's.
Yes.
I gotcha.
Well, our ancestry did. And then based on the movement and the change through the centuries, right, there was developed, and it was these different blood types developed out of major changes that we made. So your type O is the hunter-gatherer. And so they had to run and hunt. They have high energy. They love to run. And they ate a lot of meat because that was a big part, plus the plant life around them. And that was their main diet. And then as groups, there was this group then started to break up more and became more domesticated. That's when they started keeping animals, started actually farming, and that's when B type started to evolve. So that kind of gives you a little background on that.
So interesting.
So the antigens that we just talked about that create the antibodies, well, let's call them smart bombs. They're like little smart bombs. So antibodies tag foreign antigens for destruction. We did talk about that. When they detect a foreign antigen on a cell, its reaction is to make it sticky.
Okay.
In order to make it easier to get rid of. So it'll go and tag it, and then this stickiness happens in order to bring it out of the body. Okay? Mm-hmm. So this is called agglutinating. So it literally is gluing. It's like a gluing thing that goes on. Yes. Now, maybe some people don't know, but it's normal for blood cells to flow in your veins without sticking together. So they should be flowing freely. Now, I went and had my blood looked at. I could see it I had it on the screen, and I could see it under the microscope, and I could see my blood cells flowing. But there were a number of them that weren't flowing. They were sticking together, sometimes 2 or 3 sticking together. And that could be good and that could be bad too, because if you had too many of those, because some of it, our cells wear out and then they'll get tagged to get rid of, right? But if you have too much of that showing up in your blood, too many of them sticking together, well, that's a recipe for a stroke, a heart attack, right?
Yeah.
So the importance of understanding this as a background is super important, because then if there are foods that cause more agglutinating of your blood, wouldn't you want to know about it?
Sure.
Okay. So there's a lot going on because there's the stickiness will stick to viruses, parasites. It's there to defend you and take care of you. So not all sticking is necessarily going to be bad. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what does this have to do then? I kind of said that, right? What does it really have to do with our blood type? Well, it is going to make a difference in maybe the food factor. And then another really important thing that I notice is really surfacing in the research and information today is about lectins.
Mm.
And not that many people are talking about it, but it's starting to surface, and you probably will hear more about it. Lectins are proteins in food, and they have agglutinating properties that can cause a chemical reaction. And if it's incompatible with your blood type in particular, right? So your blood type favors the foods that your ancestors ate. So to eat more according to your ancestral background is going to help you determine which of those, which foods will keep you from having a problem with lectins. Now, most foods actually have lectins. And in fact, I think all foods really do have lectins. But the ones that really affect your blood type are the ones that will agglutinate your blood type specifically. So when we eat foods with lectins that are incompatible with our blood type, the lectin protein, this is another really interesting part, it doesn't break down. So if I was eating a lectin that's okay for my blood type, it's going to break down and actually go through my system like it should. But if it's not going to break down. And then it goes to target organs and body systems like your kidneys or your liver or your brain. And it stays there. And so it may be a factor in all the autoimmune things, all the things happening with our brain, because most autoimmune is brain related, even things like Alzheimer's. So I just think this information is super important. Because what it does, it targets that organ, and then it goes there and begins to agglutinate blood cells in that area. Okay.
So
and that's the science. That's what this guy found out. Right. So
the first step would be to find out what your blood type is.
That would be really good. Yes.
Step one, right?
And if you ever have given blood, anyone who gives blood, of course, they would be able to find out pretty easy from wherever they gave their blood, what their blood, and they probably know if they've given blood.
And that's an easy way to find out what it is, too. Go and give blood.
Yeah, right. And
right.
then I also, it was required for my marriage certificate. So all I had to do was go back to my marriage certificate and find it. But not all states do that, but mine did. So that's how I found out what mine was.
Very interesting. Well, it's a good thing that we are splitting this up into 2 episodes, Marsha.
Because we're almost out of time, right?
Yeah,
I think we're right about where we should be, too.
And we're right about where we should be. That is wonderful. You did mention something about, when you're eating the foods of your ancestors, right? Mm-hmm. Chances are that's where your body needs to be.
Yeah.
But I do want to make it clear to everyone that a lot of the foods that our ancestors ate are not what we are eating today. And I could say that firsthand because I am first generation Italian. My father was right off the boat, and my ancestors ate bread and ate pasta, and it was wheat. And that's really what our mainstay was growing up, was pasta. That was it. Mm-hmm. Now, it's not very long, maybe 3 weeks now, that I have given up bread and pasta, and I am feeling better. But why? Because people really, when it comes to bread, they're not really gluten intolerant. They're glyphosate intolerant. Because when we are growing wheat today, it is not genetically modified. But when they harvest it, they douse it in Roundup so that it dries up quicker than it would if it wasn't doused in Roundup. So that we have to take a look at those areas too, right, Marsha? That's really important to look at as well.
That is totally correct. And then in nature, all these plants, for instance, particularly beans and the grains, which man didn't eat in the very beginning, they have protective mechanisms around them in order to protect themselves, and that makes them harder to digest.
Yeah.
So once we have a compromised immune system, even if the food is pure, it's still going to be difficult unless you really eat it the way they ate it. So when they started eating it, they would soak it, sprout it, ferment it, and it broke down that protective mechanism on the seed and the grain, so that it was more able, so they could actually get all the benefits from it without all the negative side effects. So we don't eat anything like that this way anymore, right? So.
And God knows. I mean, I've been in Marsha's kitchen many a time, my friends, and she has quart jars everywhere, filled with things sprouting, filled with things fermenting. I mean, it's just, for me, I'm like a kid in a candy store when I go into Miss Marsha's kitchen. It's so enjoyable. Well, I like to break it off here so we don't get too far into the next episode.
Sounds good.
So the next episode, we are going to be talking, let everyone know how we're going to go forward with this.
Okay. So, we're just going to continue into the realm of food and the foods that, based on blood type, what some of those are. I'll probably talk about my blood type because that's the one I'm experimenting with, right, with these foods. And so we're going to get totally into the food part. We'll start talking about the food and how it can affect.
And who knows, maybe you'll even be able to guess my blood type. Maybe, you could ask me some questions and see next time. And then maybe before then I'll go and give blood, but I doubt that will happen. But you could always put it out there. You could always plant these seeds, folks. Some germinate, some don't, but always plant the good ones. Always plant the good ones.
Right,
well, thank you, Miss Marsha. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
I will see you on the flip side, Marsha. So everyone, thanks for coming. Thank you so much for coming. I want to shout out to our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for pledging to the Farm-A-Yard movement. Without you, we just couldn't do it, really. We're kind of like PBS, we give you content. We're like a food information clearinghouse, up to the minute. And we've got something pretty special planned for the month of April. So if I were you, I definitely would stay tuned. But I will see you all later, and I would hope that before the next time we meet, that you would go and farm your yard.
This podcast is community supported. We thank everyone for tuning in, and a special thank you goes out to all our Patreon supporters. If you enjoy our content, please subscribe and share. You can help support us through Farm-A-Yard, all one word, on patreon.com.